Wait, tell all the wrestlers out there who've never been put into submission how you survived the figure four leg lock.
To avoid it, you just have to be older, because obviously I was young. The guy was older than me, because that's how we got bullied back in the day.
16-time world champion.
My shoes cost more than your house.
8-time NWA heavyweight world champion.
Gold around my neck, Rolex watch around my wrist.
6-time WCW world heavyweight champion.
And I got a limousine sitting out there a mile long with 25 women just dying for me to go. Woo!
And 2-time WWF champion.
A Lincoln Continental, a Mercedes, a Rolls, own a Corvette, live in the biggest house on the biggest side of town.
This person, as we all know, in wrestling culture and hip hop culture, is the one and only Ric Flair.
Woo!
And this is the Rolling Pin Podcast. Thank y'all for checking out episode 2.
Yes, huh? Is this what's happening in professional wrestling?
So jumping into Ric Flair, J-Bino, what do you remember about Ric Flair and his character?
Kind of man I ever seen inside the ring. Walk around the ring, strutting with the 1-2. I don't know if y'all can see me, but you know you gotta hit that. And you do it with the walk, with the proper walk too. And then you might drop something like a simple little elbow drop. Something simple. Right before you really put the dominance on a single body part. He was the mastermind. He was also a dirty player too.
He had the ego and the flamboyance to pretty much take him to the top as one of the best wrestlers of all time. When you work as hard as Ric Flair has done, I think you are able to back it up with a little showmanship that a lot of people weren't able to necessarily bring out of themselves. You know what I mean?
The fact that he had that attitude, he backed it up. That man was a technical wrestler. He had a lot of submissions. He had a lot of moves he could pull off. Look at how old he wrestled to. It's not like he was using strength when he was in his 60s to wrestle people. It was a technique.
So moving on to what made his career so great, because what makes a career great are other wrestlers. We have Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. They both had the same type of swagger. They both were braggadocious. They both had the charisma. They both wowed the fans. They both wowed the fans with their with their attitude.
Somehow they created their personas together to make them opposites in a way that they were different, because Ric Flair was Mr. Big Shot and Dusty would take the country boy route. Woo!
Yeah. Side note, how many hoes you think Ric Flair had?
Oh, man, at least 1,000.
1,000? You think it was 1,000?
Hey, 1,000,000, right?
I can't remember.
Wilton still said 100,000. I think Ric Flair gotta be damn near.
All right, so we got Sting and Ric Flair now competing against each other. This rivalry was a little bit different from the Dusty Rhodes rivalry in similarities, but this is where the Four Horsemen kind of came about. Now we're talking about the Four Horsemen, and members of the Four Horsemen. We have O. Anderson, R. Anderson, cousins of Ric Flair, who he respected coming into the game, played a big part in his success early on, and Tully.
That's when Sting really took off. And that's when they were two of the most popular wrestlers in the business at the time.
Sting was actually a member of the Four Horsemen at one point. And Sting was competing for the heavyweight championship. And one of the cousins of Ric Flair challenged Sting and told him not to actually go for it, which caused a inter team feud where now Sting was attacked by Ric Flair, and members of the Four Horsemen eventually kicked out of the group.
That was two blonde men in shape at the prime of their careers fighting for the title. Like, back then, who else was there really around? You had Ric Flair, you had Sting, you might have had Macho Man floating around somewhere. Mm-hmm. He might have been hurt. Hulk Hogan was around, in and out. You know what I'm saying?
Because that kind of set up Sting. That's a separate situation. That set up Sting for his own career. That put him up on his own pedestal to kind of be independent and fight on his own against one of the greatest of all times, Ric Flair. If you mention the figure four leg lock, you got to mention Ric Flair. They go hand in hand.
First of all, it's one of the most dominant and one of the most unique finishers of all time. And as a participant of trampoline wrestling, I can tell you it does hurt if you perform it correctly.
So you were actually put in a figure four leg lock yourself?
Yeah, myself. And it hurts like hell, yo. It really does pop your kneecap out. Like, it's a painful maneuver. And I'll tell you, Ric Flair knew what he was doing when he created that.
I got you. But going back to the figure four, honestly, as a millennial, we thought that Ric Flair invented that move, but he actually didn't. There was a Nature Boy before the Nature Boy that we know who had the figure four leg lock under control during the 50s and in the 60s.
And in that time, there was only one way to counter it, and it was impossible to counter. Like, you got to roll them over and, like, or you touch the ropes. Two things that are very difficult to do. That right alone makes it a very nice finisher.
All right, J-Bino. So I want to talk about a very tragic moment that happened in Ric Flair's career that a lot of people didn't know. Back in 1976, October 4, Ric Flair was involved in a plane crash. This plane crash was around the time he was 25 years old. The pilot passed away, and Johnny Valentine was on the plane, a wrestler in his same organization at the time, who was paralyzed, who was never able to wrestle again. Ric Flair visited the doctor, and they told him he would never wrestle again as well. So he almost suffered the same fate as Mr. Valentine. However, as we all know, Ric Flair bounced back and continued to continue his legacy past that point. Certainly tragic news, would you say?
Certainly tragic, especially with the pilot pass and you know what happened to Mr. Johnny Valentine over there, paralyzation. For Ric Flair, it actually is a positive. Turned him into what he is now known as, which is the Nature Boy. He originally he was fat, he was overweight, he was a rough neck, like he's beating people up, like just beating them, rather than using any kind of technique or anything. So when you think about it, so when he was actually what I mean is when he was recovering, he was doing whatever they call that stuff where you heal yourself from an injury. I forgot.
Right. Yeah. Glad that Ric Flair made it through that incident and continue to go into the Ric Flair that we know today.
So he was doing physical therapy and stuff, which not only healed his injuries, but it got him back into shape, or into shape if he was ever in shape. I'm not really sure. But anyways, more lean, more trim, changed his persona, maybe even give him a little confidence looking at himself in the mirror, seeing now that he's in shape, you know, he got muscles popping out, something like that. You know what I'm saying? You know, and then he could be more athletic in the ring.
Yeah.
More so, it really created his new image, his new persona, and that's how the Nature Boy persona was created.
So that was episode 2, the Rolling Pin Podcast. Thank y'all for checking us out. If you like this video, give us a like or a comment. Also, tell us the best parts that you liked about this video. You know, Ric Flair had a very long career. So if you want to add something to this video, leave it in the comments. Definitely still willing to learn about Ric Flair, especially from you old heads out there who knew Ric Flair longer than we did. So we want to take a moment of silence for the tragic passing of George Floyd, and we'll also use this moment of silence to dedicate this to his family and his friends who know him so well. All right. May he rest in peace. May his family get the closure that they deserve from that moment. And you know, I know things won't ever be the same, but hopefully they can find light in this situation.
Definitely, prayers and love go out to the family. It's a terrible thing that happened. Just hoping for change, man.